Mr. Cornel E. Kleinfelder, this is your communication. Please go ahead.
So, as we heard this morning, Margaret had a fairly traumatic event happen to her.
Absolutely.
In my my district, our subdivisions, I've always had animals: dogs, cats, chickens, and even alpacas. But so there's no misinterpretation. What we are talking about today is specifically loose dogs attacking a person who does not intend any harm towards other people. I'm not looking to remove any rights of animal lovers or for people who depend on their animals for safety in our county, but I do seek to understand the interdepartmental processes involved in the response and the follow-up for a dog attack, like what happened.
I give a little bit of background about myself. I've been in animal care and control for well over 20 years, all over the country. I take public safety excruciatingly serious. An attack like she had suffered, leaves physical scars, and it leaves emotional scars too. And I think we all have to be very cognitive about that. As it stands now, the police department the onus is on the police department to investigate animal on human attacks. The Humane Society typically does animal on animal attacks, stray, loose animals, things of that nature. Certainly the correct thing to do is if somebody is being attacked by an animal is to call 911. We are not a lights and sirens operation. We do not even have radio contact with the police or any dispatching unit. Getting here, I've been here for a couple months. I have 3 very strong suggestions around animal control to make it more responsive for both animal and human. But basically, so then once the police investigates, the onus is on them to then kind of dump the case to us to follow up on citations. Like in this case, we've issued 6 citations on each of the animals. So we would follow up with civil infractions. We really don't handle high misdemeanors, and certainly we don't handle any kind of felony. We typically take care of what would be considered civil infractions. Without discrediting ourselves, think of it as traffic, parking tickets, things of that nature. That's really the length of the scope that my officers have, which I don't think, frankly, is enough to respond to, growing concerns of the public. I think very strongly that we do need to look at the ordinances. I don't believe that they have been looked at and revised for some time. Things change, population shift. I do think that we need an apparatus within those things that if an animal is identified as dangerous, or more importantly, potentially dangerous, that becomes a mechanism in which the Humane Society or the police department or whatever agency is tasked with it does have the ability to confiscate and hold that animal. Animals are property, and so they are subject to all of the other property rights. And for me, as a Humane Society or as an animal control person, to take your property, you're entitled to a whole lot of due process. And if we don't have a system, in the code to navigate that due process, things like this, unfortunately, are going to continue to happen. The other thing that I think is absolutely critical for animal control is to have radio contact with the other emergency services through a central dispatching. Our offices handle hundreds of calls a day, everything from my kitty's sneezing, my grandma needs a new cat, and then throughout this, we're also filtering animal control calls. That needs to be alleviated from, our normal front desk people and put into, like I said, a queue system that would be a central dispatching. Those are really the 3 main things that I feel very, very strongly that this council and my organization should work very hard to achieve. I think it's going to make animals safer. I think it's going to make people safer, and I think it's going to make the island that much more enjoyable. Obviously, as a CEO of a Humane Society, I love animals. I have dogs. I have cats. I love them on my property. You shouldn't have to love my dog in your yard. That's not how it should work. So those are the things that I think we do need to bring to the forefront.
Okay, thank you for that. How long have you been with us?
I've been here about 3 months.
3 months.
Give or take.
Okay, thank you. Some of the biggest disconnects I saw were, you mentioned already, in a dog attack, there's not an instant connection between police and Humane Society. which leaves the dogs roaming. And being naive, I would assume if a human gets attacked by a dog in a non-confrontational meeting, you know, where you're walking the dog, get attacked by loose dogs, the dogs would be retained by an agency, and then there would be a follow-up. But in this case, there isn't. 2 weeks later, same dogs are out running on the streets. 2 weeks later, that could be a kid's life. So we have a disconnect, and I think there's some wording in here that we could do just to take away the may enforce and turn it into a shall enforce, which we've learned as we've gone. And there's also a lot in here that
Owners have the means. In society, found kennels and dog runs on the property when they visited and instructed the people to keep them under control. So they have the means to do it.
they do. And there's also there's some wording in this code that requires people to keep their dogs contained in one way or another, whether it's on a leash when you're walking, whether it is on the property within a fence line. There's also protections for someone who is attacked, to have the animals taken. There is, you know, how you can be guilty of a petty misdemeanor if you're convicted under the sections where you are attacked by a vicious dog. And there's a lot of shall be sentenced, you know, but we're also touching on, you have a 5 to 6 month normal time for a prosecution of a dog attack. Our testifier earlier said she's 5 years in and still has no resolution for a dog attack case. So there is a gap between what we shall do, what we may do, and where the person who's attacked is left after an attack. And again, we're not talking, you know, if you're breaking into someone's house and you get attacked by their dog, that's a different case altogether. This is someone who's walking their dog, like Marge, and got attacked. That is just unnecessary. Dogs should be restrained. We need to be, you know, as man's best friend, we need to take care of our dogs, but also make sure that we're taking care of them and keeping them contained so they don't hurt anybody. So I'm interested in working with Marge, Charles, Police Department. We'll come together. We'll set a meeting time. If one member of this council would like to be involved in that, I am open to it, and we can talk about that later. Email me if you're interested. But I'm not going to do a working group, and I'm not going to go through that process. It takes too much time. So thank you very much for being here. Charles, I appreciate your time
Absolutely.
today.
Thank you.